Okay, so hi everyone, it's Jonathan Morar here from Tricentis. I've been working for the company for about 5.5 years, doing a few different various roles. I'm currently a solution architect based out of Jersey City. So, not loud enough? No? Yeah. Okay. Cool, so today's first Discover topic is test data management. And what we're going to do is going to go through, and I'll do a few slides, and then I would like to show you a live demo of our latest and greatest product for test data management. So, you might have seen some of our previous presentations before where we talk about the 3 nightmares of test automation and the maintenance trap, environment provisioning, and test data being one of them. So why is this one of the nightmares that we call it? And that's because what we see is it takes up to 75% of the manual test effort to actually find and provide this test data when you actually start your testing. So that's something we obviously need to solve. When we look at the continuous releases nowadays coming out, we need a solution for that. The other big thing that is, we've been talking about it for quite a while and now it's finally here, is the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. The big difference now is this is a regulation, not a directive, and it's being enforced from May 25th. And you may think it's just for EU, but one of the penalties is that they can actually fine you up to 4% of your worldwide turnover. So this is really a global issue that we need to make sure that we keep in line with these regulations. So, what does Tosca test data management look like? When we talk about test data management, our approach has we've always recommended our customers to create synthetic test data where possible. And the main reason, a couple of reasons for this. One of the reasons is, like you see, the GDPR is by creating your own synthetic test data, you're keeping in line with those regulations. And the other one is, we've seen when you create your own test data, you can actually get a high business coverage. You can cover a high amount of your business risk by creating your own synthetic test data. Oops, that would help. That's the first block, sorry. So by creating your own synthetic test data. So yeah, you keep in line with the GDPR, and we can also cover a large amount of the business risk doing this. It does change depending on the industry, like financial institutes. There's a bigger gap from the data you create to the data we need to provide from production, because we need some data that has transactional history associated to it. But where possible, we always recommend creating it ourselves. And obviously, for whatever the gap is, we want to mask production data to be able to cover off that gap to meet your business risk. And I'm happy to say, up until now, we were missing this little piece, but in the next couple of days, you're going to see an announcement there. We actually have a solution for this as well in our product as well. But they'll be covering that topic over the next couple of days. So what I'd like to show you now is the actual test data management part. Whether you actually create your own synthetic test data or whether you do a copy from production and mask it, we then need to manage that test data, because all our test data has a life. It's stateful, it can be consumed and changed in some way. And when we look at automating tests, and we have tests running in parallel, we need to be able to track our test data and keep up with the right states, so that our automated tests don't grab test data that's in the wrong state or consumed by another test running at the same time. So let's have a look and see what our solution is today. I'm going to close that down. And the screen will completely die. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay. So if you guys have used test data management in Tosca before, if you remember, it was always a part of the repository. We had a database, whether it was a part of the Tosca Common Repository or you assign your own test data repository where we stored our test data. Our latest version is actually a part of the Tosca server installation. And the reason we've done this is because we had some feedback from our customers. And when we look at projects today, projects aren't done by geos anymore, they're all global projects. So we have global teams all working on the same projects, accessing data from different parts of the world. And we found the repository was a bit of the performance could be an issue over time and with different regions accessing that data. So we've moved over to Tosca Server. And if you've ever set up Tosca Server, it's just a wizard, and now we'll have an extra couple of clicks where you just tick the Tosca test data service, and the object viewer over here, and then you're good to go. And what you'll see here now is when I open that up, we'll start off with the default repository, and then you're able to also create different projects depending on how your projects are structured. So whether you have different projects in your company, whether it's team-based, you can set up different repositories based on however you want that to run in your environment. So if I click on the default one over here, what you'll see is there's types, and at the moment there's nothing in it. So within each repository you can create a number of types as well and assign this to different projects or different parts of the application. So what I'm going to do now is, this is my Tosca server installed locally on my laptop, and I have a virtual machine over here where I've installed Tosca, and I'm just going to go through a few features to give you an idea of how this is improved in the latest feature and how this can be used. So I've got a few examples. We won't go through all of them, but I'm at one of the booths, so if you want to see some examples in more detail, please come over and I'll show you that. So the first very simple one is, if you remember, we said we had our repository and we want to create, and there's different types. So this is a very simple one. We have these pre-built modules already. Drag and drop them in into your test case using the model-based approach, and you can fill it out. So previously as well with the repository, we had to create schemas and data structures, and then we had to maintain them going forward as well, which could also be time consuming. So our customers gave feedback and our product team listened, and they created this new lightweight of creating our different data structures as well. So this is basically just incremented. You can decide all the data you want, and this utilizes a REST API, which is running on the Tosca server from that side. So if I do a right click and just tell Tosca to run, it's going to create a new type called vehicles, and with all the data associated to it. And that will run, and you can see it's a lot faster than what it used to be. I can come over here straight away, do a right click, refresh, and there we go. Now we've got a set of test data over there that's available. And our test data management solution is available end to end. Because we can automate across all technologies with Tosca, we can create synthetic data across all technologies, and that data is available for all technologies to retrieve it and use it in tests. So that's my first example, just a very simple one, writing to TDM, that we call it, our test data management. The next one I have is slightly more advanced, and what you can see is I can now use Tosca's standard out-of-the-box dynamic and regular expressions to generate random data for you. So this is data we can generate at runtime. Every time this runs, you can see I'm just using a folder there, I'm repeating it 20 times, I'm going to right click, do a run, and based on all these dynamic and regular expressions over there, you can create different vehicle makes. In this case, it's a vehicle application, and you can randomize the creation of that test data. So every time it runs, it's going to randomize that data and then write it to TDM. And if I come over here, do a refresh, you can see it's already updating over there. So the REST API is really super fast, and we've had some good feedback about that straight away. And I can just do a refresh again, and you can see it's all up and running there. So now all that data is available for all the other applications to access as well. So if I jump back over here, that's finished. That's just a simple, straightforward writing to TDM, just to show you how it all fits together. A more realistic example is, like we were saying, we always recommend creating our own synthetic test data. So going across all your applications end to end, we can go through the UI and create them. The same way you would do it manually, we automate that process, and at the end of the test, whether you're creating an order number in SAP, it might be a banking application, creating an account number or a customer number, we can then write all that information back to TDM. So I've got a few examples there. I'm just going to show a very quick one here for a quote system for a UI application. We're going to generate a quote. There's going to be a quote number. Let's write that to TDM. Before I do that, let's jump back one step, go into the insurance over here. We have 11 different sets of data over here. You can see all the different statuses. That's also important. As we create test data, we assign a status to it. That way, when the next test case runs, we can query test data management for data in the correct state. As soon as it runs, it'll lock that data out, update it for us, and that way when another test runs, it doesn't grab data that's been consumed or changed in some way. So I'll collapse that one down, launch my VM again, and just let's go through one test so you can have a quick look and see a more realistic example of us creating test data in a UI application. This is just a web-based application, but we automate across all technologies. So any applications you have in-house that are used to create your test data, we can automate that process, and then whatever the result is, or the end result that comes out, in this case it's just a quote number, could be customer numbers, or customer numbers that have account numbers assigned to them, we can write all that information back to TDM. So that's just the final step there being done in the test. I can jump back over here and do a refresh, and we should have 12 sets of data now. And you can see I've created all my different quote numbers. They're in the in progress state. And now when the next test runs in my end-to-end process, they can go and grab data. So I can generate policies, update, cancel. We can go across APIs as well. All our different applications can leverage this end-to-end, this test data management service from that side. Second last example to show you here is we said we can also work with production data once you've masked it, and that's also coming in Tosca. But my example here basically says if you already have production data that you've copied and you've masked in Tosca, we can run queries and we can pull that data back using our standard SQL automation in Tosca. Save it. So for example, in my example here, if I just minimize that, open up a database, let's say for all these license plates, we've masked this data from production already. It's available in this database. You can see how I have 3 different license plate numbers here for specific registration date, 2016. I can then get Tosca to run a query, pull that data from wherever it is, and then write it to TDM, and that can be used again in tests from an end-to-end fashion. So it's writing it over there, and then the last step here, just so that you can see, it's going to write a new type that says quote system database this time from that side. So what I'll do is collapse that, do a right click, do a run. That's a SQL query, it's going to run in the background, we're not going to see everything. So I can already come over here, do a refresh, and there we go. So now we have the new one there. It's pulled out those 3 license plate numbers from the database, which were, in my example, I've masked them from production. And now we can use that, and we've got a status as well, and then we can use that for our end-to-end test from that side. Okay. One last thing I wanted to mention is, because this is now, if I open that back up, sorry, there we go. Because it's a Tosca, it's a test data service now, it's not limited to just Tosca for use. So you can create test data within Tosca, and you can access it from other applications now as well. That REST API is available for anyone to access. So a good example that we've done, and again, our product team has done this for us, created a nice Excel spreadsheet, very simple, and they've got some macros in it, and that utilizes TDM as well. So what you'll see here is we have vehicles and insurance data. So let's say you have business users and they want to continue to use Excel spreadsheets to create test data, because this is the data you want to use in your tests. That's fine. We can write a little macro that actually says all the data in this Excel spreadsheet, I want to now upload that into TDM as well. So if I just jump back to here, I've set it up to come back to this data, the default repository. And what I can do is come over here using this macro. I can click the upload button, jump back to there, do a right click, refresh. And now we have 55 different records from the Excel spreadsheet, all uploaded into TDM for us to use as well. So there's a number of uses we can do with this now that it's a service and it's accessible outside of Tosca. This is quite a simple one, but very useful, and we've actually just made it available for everyone to use that little macro, that Excel spreadsheet. And we can also do things like, this is all the data I've created within Tosca. I want to pull that down to an Excel spreadsheet. There's my vehicle types, my types vehicle over there. Jump back over there, we've got an empty tab. We just need to name it the same way. We can pull all that down from TDM as well. So those are the records I just created now, and we've pulled them down as well. So there's a lot of uses that we can do now that it's a service. It's very fast, the structures are quick to create and maintain going forward, and it's of course accessible outside of Tosca as well. And that's it for me.